Hi guys, this is Drew from the Cellcast, and we have finally reached the end of our TAS coverage re-releases of Star Trek Lower Decks seasons 2 and 3. This episode is episodes 9 and 10, which are Trusted Sources and The Stars at Night. This was the season finale of episodes 2 and of season 3. So once again, keep an eye out for our coverage of the Star Trek Lower Decks Strange New Worlds crossover episode, Those Old Scientists, which should be very, very soon. And once again, if you have liked what you've heard so far, please let us know. We may consider doing this for other shows and maybe even give it its own podcast feed. We'll see. Anyway, thank y'all once again, and enjoy the show.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Robotech.
Come on now and set sail for the future. Fly the sky, oh, the lava.
I don't think I've ever mentioned this on here before, but do you realize how amazing it is that this silly little cartoon show that is only meant to be a streaming thing actually has a full orchestra doing the music every week?
Yeah.
I've not thought, I love it. Don't get me wrong. It's just, that is a thing you don't think about, because no other animated show do I know of actually has a full orchestra doing its music.
True.
Anyway, let's jump into this.
Yeah.
Trusted Sources, directed by Phil Mark Sagadraka and written by Ben M. Waller. In this episode, a visiting reporter on the Cerritos puts Captain Freeman on edge.
No, you think?
Fred Tatasciore, along with playing Shax, also played the character of Steve Levi. Carlos Alazaraqui plays Admiral Les Buenamigo, who finally shows his colors this week.
Yeah. Which you saw a mile wide.
Didn't help that I kept talking about it.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, he's the guy. Of course.
Yeah. Allison Becker played Victoria Nuzay. Sean Clements played Benir. Kevin Dorff played Starbase 80 Officer 1. Georgia King played Petra Aberdeen. Phil Lamar was the Cerritos Docking Bay officer. Lauren Lapkus played Jennifer Schrayen. Jessica McKenna was Barnes. Carl Tart was Kayshawn. And, of course, Paul F. Tompkins as the Cerritos security guard and Miggly Mo.
Miggly Mo.
That's the character's name.
Miggly Mo.
Trivia for this episode. This is the 3rd episode in the Alito arc. Because in this episode, the USS Alito it shows up, and it is named after the hometown of writer Ben M. Waller's wife, Victoria. This made the front page of her hometown newspaper.
Really?
Yes. And for those of you who are curious where the town of Alito, Texas is, it is west of Mineral Wells, Texas, which means it's west of Fort Worth.
Ah.
The idea of Starfleet revisiting civilizations that were previously visited and checking up on them was first mentioned by Captain Freeman in the season 1 finale, No Small Parts, when the Cerritos visited Beta 3 and saw that the Batans had regressed back to worshipping Landru. Freeman even suggested to Admiral Buenamigo that they could go back to Beta 3 after it was discovered that the Onarans are doing well and didn't need Federation assistance. This episode marks the first appearance of the Ornarans and the Breckians since the Next Generation episode Symbiosis. I went back and watched the episode Symbiosis because I was curious, because while the show does give a very, very short explanation of what happened in that episode
Mhm.
for the purposes of explaining what happened for
Mhm.
this show, they kind of skimped on why it was Picard, quote unquote, just left.
Hmm.
Because it was a little more than that.
Okay.
Basically, Picard and crew got involved because of a distress call
Okay.
that was made by a ship that where a deal was going down between some Onarans and some Breckians. Fun fact: Matthew Buttrick, who played Dr. David Marcus in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan and Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, played one of the Breckians in this
Really?
episode. Fun fact.
Hmm.
But basically, a deal was going down to move this drug back and forth, but then Picard and crew didn't know that's what it was. They're trying to help these people get off the ship before, it burned up in an atmosphere.
Hmm.
And they're trying to get them to beam themselves off because they're having some interference because of stuff going on in the system.
Mhm.
And they finally get a transporter lock on something, and they go ahead and transport it over, and it's their cargo, not the 6 people on board the ship.
Hmm.
So
Whoops.
Riker says, first starts trying to tell them to get on the transport. He says, "Oh no, just forget it. Just beam over any life sign on board the ship. Just beam anything over there that's got a life sign. Beam it over here." They only get 4.
Hmm.
2 of them did not get saved, unfortunately.
Hmm.
And so they get back on here, and they're all wanting to make sure the cargo is safe. So they all go down there, and it's very obvious that the Onarans are really a lot more desperate about what's going on than the Breckians. The Breckians just want to make sure that that the cargo was safe. The Onarans really want to get into the cargo.
Mhm.
And the Onarans are claiming that the cargo was paid for. The fact that it blew up on the ship is inconsequential. The Breckians think there is no, you didn't trade for anything, so this cargo is still ours. Now, after a little bit of time, because I'm going to jump ahead here, obviously they realize, yeah, there was a plague on Onara. Brekka did have the cure for it. The thing is, the plant that had the cure is a narcotic
Hmm.
that's very addictive. And apparently the Breckians had this plague first. And they learned it, but did not do anything to tell the Onarans that the medicine was actually a very addictive drug.
Hmm.
And even worse, as they continued to refine the drug to get into smaller and smaller doses, it also made the drug more addictive.
Hmm.
So basically, Picard was stuck between, had his own Kobayashi Maru scenario here, because the Prime Directive technically was involved, as neither culture had warp drive.
Hmm.
If you remember, Federation can't really get involved in a culture if it doesn't at least have warp drive. Technically, for political reasons, you shouldn't get involved at all if they're not Federation.
Hmm.
But beside the point. So eventually, at some point, the Onarans decide, hey, it would be really horrible if we lost our entire market base. So we'll go ahead and give you the medicine now, and we'll work out a payment plan later, which meant Picard had no way of stopping him at that point.
Hmm.
And went ahead and was going to transport everyone down to the planet. Was also going to transport down 2 exhaust manifolds of some kind, because that's what blew up. That was what caused the first ship to have so much trouble. And they had the entire planet only had 2 ships left, and they were not working very well either.
Hmm.
But Picard said, no, you're not getting that, because we can't really interfere with your society. And when the Breckians said, you can't do that, that would ruin the entire economy of both places, you weren't worried about the Prime Directive when it worked in your favor.
Okay.
So yeah, Picard beams everyone down, sans exhaust manifolds or whatever, and leaves, stating, and the thing is, this entire episode, very obviously the drug PSA.
Of course.
to the point where there is an entire point where Wesley Crusher, kind lamb that he is, asks the question, I don't understand why anyone would allow themselves to be addicted to synthetic drugs like this. And Tasha Yar has to, since she grew up on a very horrid planet, explains all this to him, and he doesn't understand it. She, of course, says, and I hope you never have to understand it. And then there's a whole thing at the end. It's like, we could have helped them. We could have made it simpler. It's up to them to figure out. It's it's what you would expect of a very humanist drug PSA.
Yeah.
Fun fact, that episode, I mentioned Tasha Yar was in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
This episode was made and shown after the episode Skin of Evil, where she died.
Originally, so she shows up in one episode.
Well, she'll show up later on because of with actually decent reasons as to why she survived. But in that particular episode, it's technically takes place before the episode she died. Even by star date, it does.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, it was the order it was shot in and the order it was shown in, both were placed after Skin of Evil. So in her last scene in this, as Picard and Crusher are walking out of the cargo bay, you can see her in the background, and all of a sudden, right as the automatic doors close, she starts waving frantically at the cameras like she's saying bye.
Yeah.
It's not just like a simple, kind of you'll never notice it on an old CRT from 1980s going bye. It's like, hey, you dropped your quarter. Kind of a thing.
I gotcha. It's like, hey, look at me, I'm gone.
Just throwing all that in there.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's basically what happened in the setting that they are doing their flyby over.
I gotcha.
Also, this episode is the first appearance of the Breen since the Deep Space Nine finale, What You Leave Behind. Those were the people who had infested Braca that had the helmets that looked like they were stolen out of Jabba the Hutt's palace in Return of the Jedi.
Right.
Which is what I thought when they showed up in Deep Space Nine.
Right.
Buen Amigo suggesting that the Onaran government may be secretly run by kids or somebody pretending to be the devil are references to the original series episodes Miri and Next Generation episode Devil's Due. During Mariner's confusion by the crew's reaction to something she didn't do, she asks whether she is in a frame of mind situation, referencing Next Generation episode Frame of Mind, where William T. Riker was psychically tortured during an undercover mission on Talonis 4, which in turn was the same name of Dr. Beverly Crusher's play, Riker Found Himself. Victoria Nuze mentions several past events from the series. Ransom turning into a giant head and trying to eat the ship from strange energies. Freeman had an emotional breakdown after taking the engineering team on a spa trip in Room for Growth. Freeman transporting a Doppler into a party from an embarrassment of Dupplers. Freeman giving a Pandoronian drill instructor a poly heart attack in I Excretus. Kayshawn being turned into a puppet in Kayshawn, His Eyes Open. Spear-wielding aliens took over the Cerritos in Temporal Edict. Quark got kidnapped in Hear All, Trust Nothing. The incidents with Peanut Hamper, the Exocomp in No Small Parts, and a mathematically perfect redemption. And of course, the encounters with Q in the episode Veritas. Steve Levi continues to believe in conspiracy theories. When Mariner is sent away, he assumes that it is some sort of temporal Cold War operation. The temporal Cold War was a running storyline throughout all of Enterprise to explain why history was changing in the show.
Okay.
Shax claims that the Breen do not take prisoners, which is not true. Many episodes from the Breen show the Breens taking prisoners and slaves in battle during Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Huh. Okay.
The personnel of Starbase 80 are shown wearing 2360s era, aka Next Generation era, style comm badges. There is a Pyrithian bat on Starbase 80. Phlox on Enterprise used to own a Pyrithian bat as a pet. And Petra Aberdeen, who first appeared in Reflections, returns and suggests searching for Veldanan monies, a species originally featured in the animated series episode The Jihad. And that is what I've got for this episode. What are your thoughts, my friend?
Oh, okay. So when they get the call, it's like, oh, because the bad admiral shows up.
Were you surprised at all that he was the one behind
No, I wasn't at all.
The implant?
No, I wasn't.
I wasn't either. Actually, I was actually a little bit surprised when I was first watching it.
Yeah.
Because I did not recognize Buenamigo. I didn't, while they mentioned Buenamigo throughout the entire show or entire season 3, it didn't connect. The character didn't make an impact on me until this episode.
Okay, that makes sense. So be like they get the message from Buenamiga.
Yeah, right? Buenamigo.
Buenamigo.
It's a bad name.
Yeah, Buenamigo.
Buenamigo.
Buenamiga.
Like bueno amigo.
Yeah, bueno amigo. So they get that call and it's like, oh yeah, you're gonna get the reporter. And I'm thinking like I'm thinking the exact same thing that Captain Freeman is like, oh crap. No.
We need to have Mariner not be involved. Yes. Ironically, Mariner's the only one on her side in this entire episode. You did not see that coming, did you?
No, I mean, like a part of me, because like
you've been saying all since we started back into this that Mariner was going to get kicked out of Starfleet. Guess what? She didn't technically get kicked out. She got sent to Starbase 80, where she quit.
Yeah, there was a part of me because they're going to be like watching the entire episode. I'm like, oh no, yeah. What is Mariner going to do? What is Mariner going to do? Because
I was the same way when I first watched this. About a month ago now.
Like just watching it, it's like, oh crap, what is she gonna do? Because like one, she's told you do not do this, you do not do this, you do not do this, and that's what Mariner does. Be like she breaks every freaking rule because she's got plot armor. But so we get to the point where
it's called nepotism.
Nepotism.
Yes. It's called you got friends and you got family in high places, and they're making sure you're getting shielded a little bit.
Exactly. But it's like she finally goes and talks with her, and then of course be like Captain, hold on, what's her name? Freeman. Captain Freeman calls her in the office and be like, yeah, exactly, you're like, yep, you did something. Be like, you screwed the pooch girl.
Yes, and doesn't give her a chance to defend herself
in a way, but be like leading up to it, be like, you know Mariner's going to do something, and Mariner doesn't know when to shut up.
Yes. And I'll admit, I was actually thinking, yeah, you stepped too far on this, Mariner. Until we actually saw the news report.
Yeah, I mean, like, I still have issues with that report. I still have issues with it, but it's like, okay, she finally gets kicked off. I'm like, yes, finally.
You don't know how much I've been biting my tongue all.
Oh yeah, I knew exactly. It's like, this is the episode she gets kicked off. Yes, praise the Lord, amen. And she finally gets kicked off, and it's like, oh, okay. She starts trying to backpedal. It's like, no, be like, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, yeah, right. Like you did something wrong. You're just trying not to. You're trying not to fess up to it.
She did nothing wrong in this episode, though.
I
know you're just happy to see her finally get her comeuppance.
Exactly.
This really should have happened to her a long time ago. But the thing is, she actually was the only one who was being kind to her mother and knew what her mother was going through, and in love she talked about the best parts of serving on a California class vessel, especially the Cerritos. Everyone else talked about everything you don't talk about to a reporter.
Yeah, that's the one thing I didn't understand, because like through the entire season 3, it like Mariner is just talking smack about everything. And so it makes sense that she's the one who says all this crap.
But Mariner has always shown that when the stakes are down, she is in it for the family of the Cerritos.
I agree with you on that.
Throughout the entire thing. Yes, she gives people a hard time, but she is Starfleet in such a way that almost nobody else on that ship is. Yes, she's a problem child.
Yeah,
she's very she's actually very everyone else is just kind of going along with the flow while she has acted from episode 1
Mm.
is actively trying to be what she sees as the spiritual, what she thinks Starfleet is.
Yeah.
She is trying to live up to that ideal.
Mm.
Granted, there are parts throughout the episode where she's just throughout the show, she's just being, a pain in the butt for the most part.
Yeah, exactly.
Because she is very sarcastic with the upper officers.
Mm-hmm.
She very much loves the idea of being a lower decks. But the thing is, her friends, as they are, she gives Boimler a hard time, but it's hard not to give Boimler a hard time. She's very supportive of Tendi and of Rutherford when they talk about all this stuff. She even is all up for showing the reporter the warp core.
Yeah.
Mariner hates the warp core. She says it's from the first episode. She says it's the most boring place on the ship.
True.
I think she secretly likes the warp core,
Probably
because she likes Starfleet, and she really would be a great captain, I think, of a California class vessel, because she's very much the embodiment of Kirk, just without the restraint.
True.
But I get what you're saying. Yes, she finally. It was a boy who cried wolf situation.
Uh-huh.
Every time she has been a pain in the butt, it makes sense that at a time when everyone is most worried about putting their best foot forward, and Mariner goes against what her mother and captain says, and gets involved with and privately goes and talks to the reporter, it makes perfect sense why everyone thinks she sold them under the bus, because I thought she did.
Exactly.
I thought maybe because I can almost follow the logic.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, everyone else would be talking up the ship, and she's gonna say, let me tell you what really happened.
Yeah.
Okay, Sean got turned into a puppet. We've had dealings with Q. That's just real life out here. We had the stuff with the Packlets. We had this whole thing where, you won't believe this, my mother got all the engineers to go on a spa trip. Hey, what engineer wants to go on a spa trip? They just want to work on engineering stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the one who had the breakdown. Because, of course, mother had the breakdown. That's what everyone thinks she said.
Yeah.
And that's not what happened.
Yeah.
It goes to show you.
It was more of a shock to that. And I was like,
right. Because, like I said, boy who cried wolf situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is really, I still blame this all on her.
Mm-hmm.
Because if she had not been such a pain in the butt, in her, even with being idealistic, that's one thing.
Yeah.
The stuff she does because of her ideals, that's one thing. And she's just a lot, as well as I do, she's a jerk half the time.
Oh yeah, she's very narcissistic.
Very, yeah. So it makes sense that that history of that has backfired on her the one time she actually is being supportive of the whole thing. And the best part about that is, because of what her mother did by transferring her off the ship, it actually hurt her mother more. Because the one person willing to speak, according to the reporter, the one person willing to speak positively about life on the Cerritos, and just for talking to the reporter, she gets kicked off the ship.
Yeah. Because she wasn't supposed to.
She wasn't supposed to. But Freeman did this to herself by not listening to her daughter. Granted, daughter didn't give her much reason to.
No, she
didn't change anything. She should have at least found out, what did you say to her?
Yeah.
Just saying. That's my thought. I understand where you're coming from. It's like she's finally getting her just desserts. Fact of the matter is, this one time, despite the fact no one will have any proof till the report comes out, no one can know this, and nobody has her back, not even her girlfriend Jennifer. That's why when she gets when she goes to Starbase 80, she doesn't quit just because she got transferred to Starbase 80. I would have.
Yeah.
From everything this show has talked about, that would have been like, you're kicking me off this ship to send me to a starbase? Shoot, I ain't going to no starbase. I don't care how good that starbase is. You're kicking me off the ship. I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm calling my best girl Petra.
Yeah.
To pick me up. And we're gonna go have Indiana Jones style fun.
Yeah, agreed.
Stealing Klingon idols from Ferengi.
Makes sense.
I may have just
went
to the next episode. But
yes.
I see what you're saying, but it's like the whole part where it's like she was doing her best and she actually did the right thing for a change, and she didn't get credit for it. I've been there.
Totally.
And this is the B. This is technically the A story, because the B story involves how the ship gets saved from the brine, and that is the USS Alito,
Yeah.
the Texas class.
Uh-huh.
And I want to be happy that the Texas class saved California class as a native Texan, but I know where this story goes.
Yep.
We'll get to that in a minute. Are you ready to move on, though?
Yeah, let's move on.
Let's go ahead and move into the stars at night. Because as native Texans, we both know the stars at night are big and bright. Deep in the heart of Texas. This episode was directed by Jason Zurich and written by series creator Mike McKeon. The Cerritos crew must prove their worth in a mission race. Because this is the last episode that we will get to talk about this show in a while, much like we did with the previous one. I'm going through the whole cast list.
Okay.
Tawny Newsome plays Beckett Mariner. Jack Quaid plays Brad Boimler. Noelle Wells plays Devonna Tindy. Eugene Cordero plays Sam Rutherford. Dawn Lewis plays Carol Freeman. Jerry O'Connell plays Jack Ransom. Fred Tatasciore plays Shax. And Jillian Vigman plays Ta'ana. Guest cast includes Carlos Alazaraqui as Admiral Les Buenamigo and the Alito computer.
That makes sense.
Georgia King as Petra Aberdeen. Phil Lamar in an unlisted role. I suspect he was a crew member somewhere on the ship.
Probably.
Jessica McKenna as Barnes. Tox Olagwandoye as Amina Ramsey. Sam Richardson as Vendome. Al Rodrigo as Durango. Gabriel Ruiz as Talin. Paul Scheer as Andy Billups. Carl Tart as Kayshawn. Paul F. Tompkins as Miglimo. Baron Vaughn as Mayer. And Michelle Wong as Wong.
Okay, then.
The title of this episode is from the opening lyrics to the American folk song Deep in the Heart of Texas. Continuity. 4 admirals appearing on the Starfleet Council have been previously encountered in the series. Admiral Wong first appeared in Temporal Edict. Admiral Parker appeared in We'll Always Have Tom Paris and Reflections, and the Trill and one of the human admirals previously appeared in trial sketches in the episode Grounded. Billups tells his engineering team that he wants to see commander data level work and that the isolinear chips better be a blur, referencing the Next Generation episode, The Naked Now, where Data replaced a ton of isolinear chips so fast that it would look like a blur. Ta'ana references being previously assigned to an Oberth class starship, making the reference to that class for the first time by name in dialogue. Ransom teaches a group of officers how to command respect, which involves sitting on a chair by swinging his leg around the back of the seat before sitting down. This is a reference to the unusual way that William T. Riker would sit down in the chair, which Trekkies have commonly referred to as the Riker maneuver. The computer terminal Admiral Buenamigo used to communicate with the Alito was visually similar to the one used for the M5 Multitronic unit from the Star Trek Original Series episode, The Ultimate Computer, which also dealt with a computer designed to command and control starship that it resulted in it attacking other ships. A similarly styled interface was also depicted in the illusory Sampaguita, the other Rutherford's spaceship.
Yeah.
Piloted by Red Rutherford in Reflections, foreshadowing Rutherford's involvement in the artificial intelligence behind the Texas class. The Cerritos revisits the Galadornians who first appeared in the first episode of Lower Decks, Second Contact. Freeman refers to Augmenic 9 as one of those Brigadoon-type planets that only phases into our dimension for a couple of hours a year. The name is a reference to the 1947 musical Brigadoon, which was about a magical Scottish village that only appeared for one day every 100 years. A planet shifting from one dimension to another is also a reference to the Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode Meridian, where the titular planet would appear in regular space once every 6 years and was also based on Brigadoon. The episode concludes the story arc concerning the origins of Rutherford's implant, which was most recently explored in Reflections. This is also the fourth and, so far as we know, the final episode of the Alito arc
Hmm.
of this show.
Hmm.
When the truth about Buen Amigo is revealed, Freeman insisted that he's not one of those bad faith admirals that's up to no good. This is a reference to a recurring trope throughout the Star Trek franchise where Starfleet admirals tend to be shown as antagonistic toward the main characters and take part in secret and illegal projects, including Admiral Cartwright, Admiral Mark Jameson, Admiral Nora Satie, Admiral Kennelly, Admiral Eric Pressman, Admiral Layton, and Admiral Dougherty. Dougherty was the one from Insurrections who they had to use the Briar Patch the way Brer Rabbit did against.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Another reference to Song of the South this episode. The mysterious benefactor behind Petra Aberdeen's mission to retrieve and return stolen artifacts is revealed to be Admiral Jean-Luc Picard, whose archaeological interests were established across many episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation. This episode also established that Picard was an admiral in 2381, which the press kit for Star Trek Picard Season 1 and the novel The Last Best Hope earlier established that Picard left the USS Enterprise E and was promoted to admiral in 2381 in order to lead in the evacuation and relocation of the Romulans prior to their sun going supernova, as we see the aftermath of in Star Trek 2009. The procedure for the Cerritos to eject its warp core was referenced back in An Embarrassment of Duplers, when Rutherford and Tendi ejected a working warp core from a kit model of the Cerritos they built and used it as a makeshift explosive to open a hatch above them and escape the Duplers.
So
They put way too much thought into it
they did. Agreed.
in that episode.
So curious because I know they've ejected the warp core before in Star Trek.
In previous ones, it did not require two people physically inserting keys to eject it. Voyager, the one or two times they had to eject their core, B'Elanna Torres, the chief engineer, who was also not Starfleet technically, as she was one of the Maquis members that had to be integrated into the crew, pretty much didn't require anyone's help to do so. At least it's never shown on screen. Insurrection did not require it when LaForge ejected the core to use the Briar Patch the way Brer Rabbit did. And it's not common for that to be seen, but other instances of where the warp core was integral to whatever they were doing, such as the self-destruct mechanism, did require one or more officers of senior level to be able to do.
Yeah.
So I am guessing that perhaps in the other shows, whoever was in chief security had maybe already given their approval on their console, so the engineer could then make that decision, but that's never actually shown. And admittedly in this one, this could just be a weird feature of the Cerritos at a time after the Dominion War, when they didn't want one person to be able to hit a button and eject a warp core if it was a someone getting into the ship that wasn't supposed to be there, like say a member of the Dominion. That's my thought process.
Okay, got it.
There's not much that took place in universe in the Alpha and Beta quadrants after the Dominion War, so exactly what security procedures would be involved, which I can see this as being one we're ever gone into. Okay. The crew of the California class ships who appeared on the view screen when the Armada arrived have all appeared in previous episodes. Captain Amina Ramsey of the USS Oakland and several of her senior officers served as temporary command crew for the Cerritos in Much Ado About Boimler. Captain Durango and the USS Merced appeared in Moist Vessel. Captain Mayer and the USS Carlsbad appeared in Mining the Mines. And Captain Vendome had originally been an ensign on the Cerritos in Second Contact before rapidly rising through the ranks to take command of the USS Inglewood, which we heard about in The Least Dangerous Game. Last but not least, the crew of the USS Alhambra, who resembled alternate universe versions of the Cerritos crew, was encountered by T'Ana when she previously boarded the wrong ship at Douglas Station in Veritas.
That's right.
T'Lyn, who first appeared in the episode Wedge Dudge, returns having now transferred to the Cerritos from her original posting on the Cheval. She is wearing the previous rank lozenge of an ensign, the provisional rank lozenge of an ensign, in the same style as that worn by former Maquis officers on USS Voyager. in the franchises, not just this series, but the entire franchise's first post credits scene. Rutherford's original implant containing Badgie being salvaged from the wreckage of the Pac-led clump ship from no small parts. It had previously lit up when it was shown floating among the flotsam as Peanut Hamper constructed her ship in a mathematically perfect redemption. But I want to talk about something that this trivia did not go into.
Okay.
The sound effect of the tractor beam
Okay.
was not Federation issue, is not by any Alpha or Beta quadrant species that I'm aware of. It really sounded more like a Borg tractor beam.
Okay. Okay, I just watched First Contact a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? You're kind of right.
Yes.
It does sound.
And you know what's really interesting about the Borg? After the end of Star Trek Voyager, we don't know what happened to them.
Hmm.
Because the only way Voyager was able to escape as they were stealing the Borg Transwarp's conduit was by planting a program bomb that into the hive consciousness
Mhm.
that should have separated tons of pretty much caused a ton of different Borg drones to regain their individuality and should have crippled the Borg hive mind considerably. But we do know the Borg were still doing stuff post that because of the Borg cube that shows up in Picard season 1. So interesting that Badgie might be involved with the Borg. It would be kind of cool to see the Borg come back because Borg were always my favorite villains. So yes, what are your thoughts on this episode?
This episode,
because I know what you said when I texted you to make sure you knew about the after credits scene.
I thought it was like okay, this is like be like obviously they're in a conference, and then the admiral, the mustache twirling Admiral
Buenamigo,
Buenamigo, decides to be like, oh, we're going to dismiss all the California class for the Texas class,
which makes no sense.
It makes no sense whatsoever.
Here's the thing: I can see maybe canceling all current missions for the California class in favor of the Texas class taking over, and that might call for at least a short amount of time that the Cali class be mothballed, especially after maybe the Cali class is not as needed as much after the Dominion War, since Starfleet shouldn't need that many. If the Texas class is truly taking over, you may not need that many manned ships if you've got an automated ship group doing all the grunt work.
Yeah,
that's the thing about the California classes. It's meant to be the lower decks ships. It's not ships of the line like the Enterprise or even that Sovereign class that showed up in this episode for no good reason.
Yeah, just be like, oh, we can do a Sovereign class in here.
Yeah, we'll just throw the Sovereign class in here, and boy, they didn't stand up long.
No, which threw me for a freaking loop.
Like, that's supposed to be the most advanced ship in the fleet.
Why is it getting taken out?
Why is it getting taken out by the? Granted, the Texas class would have the newer technology, and it's got a computer.
A Sovereign class.
Got a human class, but it's a Sovereign class ship.
It's a freaking warship.
Yes.
Which made no sense. But we'll be like, Captain, more like the Admiral says like, oh, we need to scrap all the California class for no reason except for like, oh, this one crew didn't do it right, so we're gonna scrap everything. Makes no sense.
It would make more sense. Okay, I mentioned a TOS episode in the beginning that's called The Ultimate Computer in the trivia, that the interface for the Alito took its inspiration from. In that episode of they actually outfitted this computer into the Enterprise for the same idea of like, why put a manned vessel out there when an unmanned vessel would be able to do a lot of this stuff? And basically the same reason why when Tendi saw that there might have been life there. Basically that same sort of minuscule thing the computer wouldn't catch, but a human, a biological person would catch. It was the reason why it was done there. But In fact, I think at some point someone said, "I'm going to Dunsel." Rutherford said, "I'm going to hit you so hard you'll be like Dunseled or something like that." Dunsel came from that episode where they referred to the captain of the ship as being Captain Dunsel because Dunsel was another word for useless.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Dunsel.
Dunsel. Yeah. So if they had gone more like that, even though it'd be very obviously more based on the Ultimate Computer, that where they were changing out, like taking the command crew out of a California class vessel and putting this computer in charge, and then changing up all like the crew quarters to be more, more solid, like we see of the Texas class. Yeah. Apparently got replicators built into it.
Yeah,
and on a mass scale. Maybe I could accept it more like that, but yeah, mothballing an entire fleet of grunt vessels because you have an automated vessel that looks fancy and shiny and new, is a little odd.
It is odd.
Now, I also want to say this as a Texan. At first, I was annoyed that a Californian who wrote this episode, which is why the ship is a California class in the first place, I was annoyed that he would cast Texas as the villains, this Texas class as villains, because it's not hard to read between maybe the lines where California's great, Texas is evil, sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Except I realized something. Who else would you cast as California's rival?
It's only like Alaska.
There's not enough people there.
Sure.
Texas is only a little bit bigger in land area, and it's a little bit under in terms of people, just simply because of Los Angeles. But you talk about personalities. I mean, Texas and California are the only two that when you ask someone where they're from, they say that's where they're from.
Yeah,
Texas or California. Elsewhere, they might say, "Oh, I'm from Chicago," or "I'm from New York City," or New York generally.
Yeah.
I don't count that because everyone usually means the city when they say New York.
Right.
Or they might say they're from Florida. No one will admit they're from Florida. I don't know. Floridians, I apologize if I just made you mad. But I'm saying in general.
Yeah.
In general culture, if you're going to cast an entire state against another state, California and Texas are pretty dang close. Is about the only thing that really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because we're the only ones that are really antagonistic against each other. So I'm really more annoyed that Texas lost in some ways because we were the villain ship and not the hero ship, because the hero ship has to survive.
Yeah.
This is not, is it only been, if they had somehow blown the Cerritos up and then you had brought it back in another episode, maybe I could believe that, but that would require the Texas to win, and that would actually be a bad ending for the season, and you wouldn't have this thing with all the California classes coming together to fend off this last ship named after a small Texas town that I actually had to look up where it is, despite the fact I live in this state. But I'm still a little annoyed that the Texas class was cast as villains. But I've said this from the beginning, that this show is doing a lot better job of setting up the troubles we see later on in Picard than Picard did. Because a lot of what's going to happen, this is a bit of a spoiler. This is not really a spoiler because Star Trek already showed some of this.
Yeah.
On First Contact Day in 2385, 4 years after this episode.
Okay.
April 5th, 2385. Yeah. While the shipyards at in Mars, Utopia Planitia shipyards in Mars, are going to be destroyed, blown up by a terrorist attack, and it's going to be done by a bunch of androids that they had built to help speed things along, to get ships to go help evacuate Romulus from the star exploding. And that event, while pretty much stopping anyone helping Romulus at that point, will cause all synthetic life forms to be banned in the Federation. Think about who that would mean. Data, at the end of Nemesis, if you don't know, dies.
Yes. Yeah.
And so B4 would be the only Noonian robot that would still be active. that would affect. And we see that in Picard, him already being studied at the Daystrom Institute and being split into different pieces. The Doctor from Voyager may have an issue because he's technically a computer program. It's a hologram.
Yeah.
He's technically a synthetic life form. The exocomps, whatever you say about Peanut Hamper, I completely agree with.
Yeah.
But the rest of the entire race, probably innocent of any of these crimes, and yet something bad's gonna happen with them, and all of that is gonna come down in 2385, 4 years after this. And in the original context, there's no reason other than that the fact that this one group of synthetics attacked these Noonian style androids, attacked and did all this. Granted, we found out later that there was more to it than that, obviously, but you don't know that when they first bring this up.
Right.
They really comes out of nowhere when they show that. And it's kind of supposed to, because it's supposed to be building mystery.
Yeah.
But no point throughout the whole series do they actually go into what all was going on also around that time. This is actually doing a pretty decent job, especially when you get Badgie being a problem in season 1. We get Landru at the end of season 1 shows up. We get the evil computer from that one episode in season 2 comes up. And then we see Peanut Hamper once she gets found again, is in the same place in the Daystrom Institute, right next to that one evil computer. And then you have all of the Texas class, which are synthetic androids, probably not of Noonien Soong level intelligence, but it's the same AI that powered Badgie for the most part. So to normal people, that's not going to be that much of a difference. And then now we know that Badgie is still alive. Wow, where they are really going to show, it's not just going to be, this one attack caused all this hatred to show up. No, it's going to be a constant thing after constant thing, to where that attack is just the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
And I love that this is doing the show is doing this when it didn't have to.
Agreed.
They could have just gone and made a funny show. No, they're actually building lore to move the story of Star Trek forward to make it a point where when Picard happens, it makes sense. Anyway,
agreed. Okay.
Sorry, I had to nerd out there for a minute.
You're good. You're perfectly fine. The idea of like that Captain Freeman is just like, oh no, we need to do a race for this. I'm like, you need to do a what? You a race to do this?
She was panicked because she didn't want to lose her job.
I understand that.
After she
totally
embarrassed the entire class in the Federation. I'm surprised she didn't get fired right there. Because she should have been.
But it's like, okay, we're going to do this race. I enjoy what they do with Tindy. I really enjoy what they do with Rutherford.
Yes.
That Rutherford understands, it's the code. It's this. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's this guy. It's the mustache twirling evil.
Yes. He's the one who caused me to lose my memory. You're keeping the implant anyway. Yeah, because it's got all these other cool features. Rutherford, your engineering is going to kill you
someday.
Bear in mind, we still have evil Boimler out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Working for Section 31.
Yeah. And it's just like, okay, I totally get that. That's cool. It's Tindy being herself and she's worried, this kind of stuff. I love that. There's a part of me like when Mariner gets brought up, because I'm thinking, oh no, be like, this is gonna be like everybody's worried about Mariner, and
just like everyone was worried about Boimler when he was on the Titan.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking it was because that Mariner is kind of our main character.
Yeah.
In the story.
And it's split between her and Boimler, to be honest.
That is true. But it was like, okay, they're not focusing on Mariner, they're focused on everything else going on. Besides the captain, be like her grief for what she did.
Well, everyone feels guilty because they all talked down to Mariner and their last time they talked to her.
Right.
The only reason they know she's not on Starbase 80 anymore is because probably the captain told everybody she left Starfleet. Or they could easily check those records themselves.
Yeah. that was another thing. Kind of going back to the previous episode
Mhm.
where the reporter is talking about everything the Cerritos has ever done. That kind of shady, that kind of stuff. This is like a federation who's kind of be like, oh, we've done this. Be like, we want to be very transparent about everything, right?
Except this is right after the Dominion War. You know as well as I do that when a war breaks out,
Yeah.
rules change. What you would have gladly done in peacetime in terms of transparency, you don't do in a war because you don't want the enemy to find out, especially when you have an enemy that will look like you.
True.
And can easily get into stuff down to the thumbprint, down to stuff that actually.
But
the only way they could tell when that a person was not a changeling was to take a blood sample. So it's very much like The Thing from John Carpenter's The Thing in that way. So that's the situation they're coming out of. So they still have a lot of security stuff still in place, a lot of that paranoia and panic about who is actually in the Federation. It's one of the reasons why Section 31 appears to be coming back, maybe not as clandestine as they used to be. They're coming back maybe almost full force, perhaps, since they have their own special comm badge again. So yeah, this is a different Federation than Picard's Federation.
Okay, that makes more sense.
This is one coming out of a brutal war that nearly this is like coming out of World War II. This was not Cold War like with the Klingons. This was a bloody attack over and over and over again against between the Federation and essentially the anti-Federation that was picking up systems in the Alpha Quadrant with like the Breen and the Cardassians and making them part of the Dominion. The Dominion was trying to take over, and they had it really did look like it was going that way. And honestly, because of the way the Dominion War stopped in the last episode of Deep Space Nine, it's kind of sudden. So there's you have to think from their point of view, they're still on alert. They don't know what's going to come.
That makes sense.
That was not a war that like the Federation had ever fought before, because everyone before that was really more of a Cold War. This was full on military, full on battles everywhere. So yeah, this is a different Starfleet that's had to act. Yes, they are returning back to their explorer roots, but there's still a lot of paranoia involved.
Makes sense. Okay, so that makes a little more sense, because I kept thinking, it's like, but wouldn't like people in general like know what these ships are doing?
Even in Picard and Kirk's time, not necessarily, because you also have to remember this is one of the things I don't like about the Abrams verse. These are supposed to be distances far enough away that it's like being on the frontier in the Old West back in like right after the Civil War. It's supposed to take time for communications to occur.
Okay.
It's not meant to be the instantaneous that we see. And that is true probably up until Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Because I can see the need of maybe upping the communication speeds between the systems better.
I gotcha.
After it's a problem in the Abrams verse, in my opinion, because they make everything seem like too much like Star Wars.
Yeah.
But I can kind of see why maybe subspace communications might be in better shape at this point, because of probably a lot of wartime money was put into increasing the capabilities of the subspace network.
Yeah. I get that. I get it. So,
and plus, why would any military organization publicly talk about every single thing that even if it's unclassified?
Yeah.
You don't talk about everything.
Yeah.
You have no need to. And there's some things you probably wish were classified that aren't, that you pray nobody ever asks about.
True.
Such as, a prominent businessman who owns 70 some odd franchises across the galaxy being kidnapped under your watch.
True.
Granted, it was his fault to begin with, but that's not how it would have been talked about. True. Especially on Deep Space Nine, which was the essentially the front lines of the Dominion War. Bet your communication to that station's still in good shape.
Understood.
Anyway, sorry.
Anyways,
I'm not trying to tear down every point you bring up. I'm just pointing out this is probably why.
Yeah, it's good points. It's good points. it's like I get it, but there's this parts of it's like, okay, so be like they realize that the Bonamigo is the bad guy, and now he's gonna be like, oh, because now they know, and be like, oh, I should have destroyed you,
Rutherford.
Rutherford, thank you. I should have destroyed everything part of you, Rutherford. But it's like, okay, I'm gonna have my ship destroy you. Oh, it backfired. It's gonna kill me. No. And it's like, okay, that's kind of funny. But at the same time, it's just like, okay. And then the Sovereign class shows up. And then it gets he's just butt kicked.
That was
Why?
I think because they needed about 2 more minutes of footage,
That is true, but it's like
which in a streaming show should not be a problem.
it just made no sense for this Sovereign class, which was like the warship of warships,
Yes,
gets taken out by just like,
at least it wasn't the Enterprise.
that is true. It's like, oh my gosh, that gave me a headache. And then it's just like, okay, like of course Mariner shows up, and like all the other California class show up. I'm like, how did she convince all these captains to show up? When be like, it's Mariner, and everybody probably knows Mariner is not the greatest person to work with.
Mariner has connections.
That's true. She does have connections.
She has that connection with her friend that runs that one ship, and knows that when Mariner is actually active on the ball and not actively trying to screw stuff up, is probably the best person in Starfleet.
I would agree with you.
The way they show that off, that's how it's presented.
Agreed.
That makes sense. Vendome, the Bolian captain of that one ship, he knows exactly how she is because she served under him.
That's true.
He knows how kind of character, and when push comes to shove, she knows that she's probably telling the truth. And plus, the way she found out that the Cerritos was getting attacked, they probably all knew it too.
True.
And the only reason they hadn't shown up over there anyway is because they needed somebody to say, hey, if we are going to survive as a class, we need to band together and go take out this robot ship. And Mariner is very good at being a what do you call it? She's very good at encouraging, at convincing people to do something, to actually. Granted, she misuses this a lot, but she does. She does have this ability to encourage people to do stuff they may not want to do, be iffy to do, because none of those ships had orders.
Right.
They probably were in stand down mode because to see how this mission race thing was going to turn out, since it was going to determine. Yeah. I don't know why this was allowed to determine this in the first place, where they showed it, but to see how this would go. And the fact that an actual officer found this thing and it actually may have caused a prime directive issue that the ship, if it malfunctioned, would have skipped. It was thankfully just a little bit of dust in the soil, but that has been known to actually be something in Star Trek. This time it wasn't. What if it is next time? Yeah. And it's a Texas class that found it and just said, oh, it's not biological life. I don't care.
Yeah. There, I agree with you on that. I completely agree. Yeah,
it's horrible for me to talk ill of Texas, but
it's a fictional ship.
I get that.
Like you brought a lot of really good points, because there again,
I've been thinking of this episode for 2 months, thinking, do I like this or not? Does any of this make rational sense? There is stuff I don't like that very much feels like. It's funny. Of all the episodes, Mike McKayen's episodes are usually the ones I like the least. And yet he's the creator of the show.
Yeah.
So it's like, I know he has ideas and he's probably the starter and stopper of these things. And he's probably executive producing the whole thing. But I don't like his writing style because it involves Shax doing the Chariot of Fire run to the
that
warp.
Was stupid.
It was stupid, but I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then of course all the the California classes showing up. It's like, why not just every manned Federation vessel? Why have just one class? Have all of them show up, because this is going to affect all of them. Once the Texas class takes out the Cali class, what's stopping it from taking out all the old Constitution classes, all
Uh-huh.
the old Excelsior classes, all the old Miranda classes, and all the other ships that are still active and still doing good works out there. Eventually, the Sovereign class is going to be affected by this if it's
Mhm.
allowed to continue, where you follow it all the way through. Because at some point, someone's going to ask, if this one class of vessel can do it without anyone being involved, why aren't we doing that with all of them?
Yeah. Like
It's like self checkout at a grocery store.
yeah,
They started with one or two as a convenience, and now it's really the only thing half the time you can get,
true.
except
Good.
where you work
Yeah, for now.
for now.
So yeah, but like you brought a lot of points up, and there again, I do have a lot of biases towards Mariner because
Granted.
I haven't liked Mariner
I know
for
this.
a long time, but
And it's just very easy for me to play devil's advocate because I kind of you have to remember my rationale for how this works in Star Trek,
Mhm.
because a lot of this really shouldn't, is that this is not the events that's actually happened. The events that they're portraying don't happen exactly the way we're seeing them.
Mm.
We are seeing a holo novel or a holodrama based on the logs of the 4 main characters.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are going to exaggerate, especially since Mariner's one of these 4.
Mhm.
So of course, she's going to be putting in all this other stuff that maybe doesn't have anything to do with anything, but shows her being cool. Boimler's going to be focusing on all the cool upper, everything everyone else is doing, especially the stuff on the Titan.
Mhm.
Rutherford, of course, going to be focusing on the engineering, and Tendi, she's focused on all the cool science stuff and all that cool stuff. And the way their stories mash together is way we get this.
Mhm.
That's the lens we are seeing it through. Now, granted, there is an episode of Strange New Worlds
Mhm.
that's coming up that probably I'm going to make us have to review as part of this story arc
Okay.
when it happens, even though it's live action, because of the
Mhm.
fact that it may affect season 4.
Okay.
But we'll get to that when we get to season 4.
Yeah.
And that if that shows those characters in a more standard Starfleet style, like the rest of the Star Trek franchise, that will pretty much prove my point. That this is not who these characters really are. This is how they're being portrayed by someone who is looking at these logs and trying to get at the heart and pretty much making a comedy out of these events. Because that's what I think is. I think that we are seeing somebody's. Remember how earlier in the series when there was those rumors going on around about Mariner and how that she actually started.
Mhm.
That kind of proves what's going on here. She is very much a tall tale teller.
Very sure.
And this really does feel like more of that tall tale telling
Mhm.
in some ways. I love the show, don't get me wrong, but I
Yeah.
still don't think this is what actually happened, because otherwise, why would you make the Pakleds? The Pakleds are stupid characters.
Yeah. Why would you make them that stupid?
They're not that stupid. They do follow a logic. There's not like, oh, you want a peace treaty? That's above my helmet. You're going to need a bigger helmet. They're not that stupid. They're stupid, but they're not that stupid. Quark is that greedy, but you don't show it that obviously.
Yeah.
Anyway. Because the other thing is you look at anyone reprising their roles on the show, they're not reprising them how they were playing them. They have an ounce of fun thrown in there,
of course,
because this is not who the characters really are. Even Riker's the best option for this, because Riker doesn't throw that much jazz into what he talks and how he talks on the show. It comes up, don't get me wrong, but it's not like he's not saying give me a warp factor into 5, 6, 7, 8 like at the end of the first season. It's not like that. Anyway, sorry, I'm geeking out.
You're fine. Yeah, I mean, it's trying to look past those biases, because they're gonna have a bias towards Mariner, but it's just like I enjoy what they did. I enjoy what they did with the episode, and it's just like, oh, okay, like maybe Mariner didn't do what maybe she didn't do what
everyone thought she did.
Yeah, everyone thought she did. I was halfway expecting that it was something that someone pulled something strings in the storyboard, but oh, we've got to make this nice. It wasn't really Mariner. Everybody else was doing it. That's my thought. That it was
Except that doesn't fit her character. I get what you're saying, because on a surface, yeah, she's the one who's the pain in the butt. That's a lot of her, but the thing is, her character is more complex than that.
yeah.
She is the kind of one who would stand up to someone who was trying to badmouth the California class, especially when she saw who all was being allowed to talk, and thought, these people they're great people. I love them, but they don't know when to keep their mouths shut about certain things,
Okay.
which was proven. They didn't know when to keep their mouths shut.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah.
I get your point. I get
Yeah.
your point, and I know you don't like Mariner as a character, but I think she's a better character than you're giving her credit for. I'm saying.
I can see points, but at the same time, looking at like through like a psychological lens, it's just more. It's I would literally have to break it down. Literally break it down to like who this character is, and it's just like at some points it makes no sense why this character would do this. But I understand it's a comedy. Let's have fun with it. But at the same time, be like a character like Mariner would not do this. But that's just me.
I think she would under the right circumstances, and I think those were the right circumstances.
Okay, fair enough.
That's just my thoughts.
Yeah, fair enough. Totally fair.
Because people are more.
I know people are more
complex than they seem.
Yes, agreed.
Anyway,
agreed. Yeah, be like I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for what it was, and there again, trying to not let my biases be like, yes, she's gone, bye, kind of thing.
And besides, just like when Boimler left at the end of season 1, there was no way they weren't going to find some excuse to bring her back.
Yeah, bring him back. Yeah,
bring him back. And when she left here, it's like, okay, you're having an excuse. Maybe it won't be till the beginning of season 4, but you'll have an excuse to bring her back. It will make sense.
Yeah,
honestly, yeah, it makes sense. She realized, honestly, her leaving was probably the best thing for her.
Okay, yeah,
because she'd been in Starfleet all the time, so leaving, she was allowed that breath of fresh air, but she was already feeling like, yeah, this freedom is nice, but now I want to go back. And
That's
maybe true. I have to make sacrifices, even in my ideals, in order to make this work. Because Starfleet is very complex. It's not going to fit my ideals all the time. No organization does.
Right.
So maybe I need to get over myself.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's what she shows, because she went back to even though she knew the crew probably felt guilty, especially she knew her mother probably felt guilty. She literally went back to an area where everyone, the last time she saw them, hated her guts.
Yeah.
That's hard to do, even if you know they probably are going to forgive you.
Yeah.
Or they're going to ask to be forgiven themselves.
Yeah.
That's hard. And she still did it.
Yeah.
Because she knew the right thing to do was, because none of the California classes needed to lose their jobs simply because, or be broken up simply because this automated new tech thing came through. That's obviously not going to be as good as people think it is, because she studied Starfleet history. She knows the events of the ultimate computer. She knows this is going to go the same way. I don't know. I'm probably reading too much into it. But the one thing I've known about Mariner from the beginning is that she is very idealistic, and she wishes Starfleet was probably the way it was before the Dominion War. But the Dominion War changed a lot of stuff, and now she wants to go to what she believes Starfleet is, maybe not what it actually is.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of this story is going to require her to, and we have seen this, I think, her growing up.
Yeah.
And coming to the realization.
I would agree with you. And definitely in season 3, she's grown up a little as a character. Now,
I think she's grown overall, but that's just me.
Yeah. I would agree with you on that. Be like, she has grown up. She has grown. She has matured in some ways. My hope would be in season 4, it's that you see that Mariner has turned a new leaf, and she's, not this,
obnoxious
about everything.
That is the thing. She is obnoxious, and to some degree, that is going to still be part of her character, because that's just how she is. But hopefully we can even see at the beginning of this season, she was starting to have more respect for the chain of command, even if she was still being very free spirited about how she did things. A little bit more respect.
A little bit.
And now we're getting, she actively asks for Ransom to be her mentor. Despite the fact that, granted, part of that's like, yeah, I want to bug Ransom because it's fun.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, she thought he was hot in that one episode of season 1.
Sure.
When he went full Federation.
Yeah.
So maybe there's some, I don't know. She technically is also dating Jennifer. So
right. Who knows?
I don't know. I don't know how it's going to go. I think she is learning. Boimler has had a lot of growth this season with the whole bold Boimler thing, which has been good or ill sometimes, but for the most part, it works for him.
Right. Agree.
It's worked for him a lot. Tendi has grown as a science, not just as being in the science officer training, but also in her acceptance of who she is. Because in the DS9 episode, she had to go back. She had to rely on her Orion pirate training because apparently she's a pretty big deal in the Orion pirate syndicate.
Apparently,
we still don't know what all that's about yet. Even though in that one episode, someone called her princess. And then you got Rutherford, who has had the most plot of the entire show so far.
Agreed.
What with the implants, and we finally get a lot of answers in this last episode. So I'm curious where they're going with his character too.
Yeah.
If we're talking about characters who had the least amount of character growth, that goes to Miglimo, because he's still the same stupid bird he was when we first met him.
That is true.
Making food puns.
Yeah, food puns the entire time. Agreed.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, yeah, looking forward to season 4, whenever that comes out.
It's supposed to come out at the end of next year. I'm guessing we will not jump on that immediately, especially if we are still in the middle of either X-Men or we've started something else.
Yeah.
Because we will have to jump on something as soon as we finish X-Men. But the next time we are able to jump in and talk about season 4, maybe when season 5 is coming out, like we did these. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. And I'm be happy to see where this goes.
Agreed.
So you got anything else before we cut out of here? We do need to talk about what we're reviewing next.
Yes.
Which for the actual show is I keep saying a YouTube video. It is a fan animation, I believe.
Yeah, they're shorts.
Or at least it's someone who did some animation.
Yeah, they're
apparently I'm not signed into Google Sheets. Yes, I know. So next week we're reviewing the short My Cat Lucy. What is that about?
That is, I'm not going to spoil it because it's a short and it's interesting. It's a guy and his cat. And the cat does some very interesting things.
Okay.
So I'm going to leave that up to like Drew over here watching it just to see his reaction. It's like, okay, that's what's happening.
Okay. And then for animated series, we're going to be looking at the first 2 episodes of X-Men, the animated series, Night of the Sentinels, parts 1 and 2.
Nice.
And that's how we are starting off 2023.
Yep.
So join us next week for that. In the meantime, this has been Drew.
This is Jacob.
And if I can hit the buttons
you
in the
can
right
follow
order,
Jacob on his Facebook at Jacob
and we'll
B.
catch
Heron.
you in the
His
next
Facebook
frame.
page, Jacob's Daily Art Corner, where he tries to draw each and every day. His Instagram at Jacob B. Heron. His Twitter at Jacob Heron. And his Letterboxd at Jacob Heron. You can find Drew on Facebook at Drew Dodgen. His Facebook page Drew's Photo Bin to see his photography. His Letterboxd page at GGeorge759. His Twitter at GGeorge759. And Instagram at Drew Dodgen. You can like us on Facebook at the Cellcast Podcast. On Twitch at the Cellcast Gaming. On YouTube at Cellcast. On Twitter at cast_cell. The Cellcast can be found at Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or anywhere else fine podcasts are downloaded from. Please rate and review us where you found us, and also on Podchaser. Email us at thecellcastpodcast@gmail.com. The Cellcast is a proud member of both the Pop Americana and Culture Box media networks. For more information, please see the link in the description. Our theme song is Drop and Roll by Silent Partner. And remember, that's Cell with a single L.